Welcome back to the channel. My name is Robin, and today I want to put together another list of 10 of the best standalone fantasy novels I've read in, that pretty much I've ever read. Like this is a list I just want to, as I get new picks, I'll just keep creating these lists. Like these books they're all amazing, they're all worth checking out. They were all a blast to read. The ways that they approach fantasy as a genre, in the way they do things, the way they tell stories, the creativity that's incorporated into them. They all bring different things to the table, different like unique things to the table. And when you see these picks, you'll get that sense. Like this is a very wide range of books. There's bound to be something for everyone. And yeah, let me get into this latest 10. So as usual, these books are in no particular order. These are just like 10 random standalone recommendations. But anyway, first off is the book that blew my mind this year, and with, I'm guessing, no surprise to anyone and who will see this video, is The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. So how do I even begin to encapsulate what this book is? Like, its very basic plot is essentially these two warriors. They assist this goddess to travel across land, to travel across land where she has a purpose to fulfill. That's the basic plot, but that has absolutely nothing to do with why anyone loves this story. Like, this book has it all. It is fantasy, it has romance, it has grimdark, it has action, it has just these emotional character moments. It's told in multiple narration styles. It's told in multiple ways, like first person. It's omniscient. It's the very writing style. It switches. It has a mythic feel to it. At other times, it's like a story being narrated to us. Like, it's just this book is. It just, in many ways, it just defies describing, encapsulating everything that it is. It is one of the most creative, one of the most unforgettable novels I've read. Not just fantasy novels in general, that I've read in quite a long time. And there are some books, when you read them, they just stand out in such a way that you know years down the line they're going to stick with you. A decade, 2 decades from now, they'll stand out as one of the best in the genre. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that The Spear Cuts Through Water is one of those. Moving on. This one might be considered a quote-unquote cheating, but I felt like I really wanted to include it, and that is Clark Ashton Smith, The Dark Eidolon and Other Fantasies. So this is a collection of his short stories published by Penguin Classics, and it's really great in that it gives you just this wonderful taste of Clark Ashton Smith, his writing, his creativity, his vibrancy. Like, these stories, they're so compelling, they're so engaging, they're so engrossing, that it's been almost 100 years, and these stories are just so good to read, so fascinating, so interesting to read. Like, this guy was a contemporary of Lovecraft. He's one of the pioneers of like the weird, the pulp, the fantasy horror. Like I said, roughly 100 years at this point, and this collection for me, it's my first taste of Clark Ashton Smith, and I'm happy that I went with this route. Like, I got this curated collection of his stories. It gave me a wonderful taste of why everyone likes this guy, and I'm 100% a hardcore fan of his at this point. I do intend to read his completed fiction at some point, because of this book. Like, it just, for me, it's a wonderful taste of just how creative, and just how vibrant stories can get in this genre. And like, this book, it has, there's so many different tales in here that some are bound to resonate with you. And yeah, that's my second pick. The third is probably once again no surprise to anyone, but The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. So I'll admit, I tend to be very hesitant about when books get hyped to me by reviewers, when they get, especially when they come from the self-published fantasy space. Like, I've read self-published fantasy on and off for a very, very long time now, and a lot of it has been missed with me. A lot. So I was hesitant to read this book, but holy crap. This book is it's one of the most complete, most enriching epic fantasy stories I've ever read. And it does it all in a single volume. It's very creative in the choice of story it tries to tell. And at its heart, it also has everything that we love about epic fantasy. Like, it's pseudo-Japanese. We just have a really lovely collection of themes discussed here. Like, it's essentially the story of rural military force fighting back an invasion of their country, like fulfilling their duty, withstanding an invasion, and then dealing with the consequences of that invasion. But it's so much more than that. It has a very human story to tell about the. It has a very human story to tell, and it looks at so many different facets of this conflict: the political, the human, you need to read this. This is one of the few cases in which I'll say a book this hyped is not overhyped. You need to read it, and that's why it's on this list. Moving on, number 4 is Crucible of Chaos by Sebastien de Castell. Now, when you look up this book, you'll see that it's paraded as the prelude to a series, and I have absolutely no idea why. The first in that series is out, and there's no connecting thread. No, like this is something I've discussed with other people who've read these books and enjoyed them. There's absolutely no connection between this book and the series it's supposedly a prelude of. I can only conclude that the publishers did not want to risk doing a standalone, so they marketed it as a prelude, when in actuality this is very fully a standalone. It's set in the world of Tristio, which is the world of Sebastien de Castell's Great Coat series, and it's just a flamboyantly wonderful, swashbuckling, enriching story of the King's Crucible, a magistrate who goes to arbitrate conflict between the monks of this monastery. But when he walks into this monastery, like, things have gone completely off the rockers. Like, there's pretty much a full-on civil war going on. Like, there's nothing about these monks that read and find out. This book is just a wonderful taste of why we love Sebastien de Castell. Like, just these vibrant characters that he can bring to page, engaging, terrible, gripping story, wonderful writing, action-packed from start to finish, and just this swashbuckling sense of just sheer exhilaration and enjoyment that you can't help but love these books. Everything that we love about him is captured perfectly in this one book, and it's unaffiliated. Other than being set in the world of these other series, it's unaffiliated with any of them. It's a great starting place if you want to try his work, and it's just a great book to read in general. Like, you don't need to know or care about anything else that happened in the series. Like, this is just a fun fantasy book to read. And yeah, moving on is a book I've seen it referred to. It's Vaishnavi Patel's debut novel. I've seen it referred to online as Kaikei. The people I know who know Hindi refer to this book as Kekehi. So I don't know if that's the proper traditional pronunciation of the character who this book is about. So call it what you will, Kaikei or Kekehi, either one, I guess. But essentially this is the recent trend of those feminist retelling of myths, most commonly Greek and Roman, like that are just absolutely clogging the fantasy space. This is one based on Hindu mythology, in particular Kaikeyi or Kekehi, who is the mother of Lord Ram, one of the more central deities of the Hindu pantheon. And it tells her side of the story. In the myth, she's presented as like this evil, conniving person who tried to prevent Lord Ram from fulfilling his destiny, to the point where he was exiled for well over a decade from his homeland. And one of the most significant dates on the Hindu calendar in particular is all about Lord Ram's return from exile. And this book is about the character who sent him into that exile. And just the story of his birth and his growth and everything that led up to the point where he left into that exile. And it's told with a feminist bent. It's a very human-driven character story. It's rich, it's vibrant, it's compelling, and most of all, it's not clear-cut. Like, it's very morally ambiguous. Like, I just love that everyone portrayed in this book, they're not like these shining paragons of either good or bad. They're great characters. Like, they have good moments, they have bad moments. Like, it's just a really... I was shocked at the quality of this debut. I haven't had the best... To be honest, I haven't had the best history with reading, like, Indian-inspired fantasy, but this one, it was really good. It truly was good. But yeah, to keep things moving on, because this video is starting to get very long. At number 6, I have China Miéville's Real Sea. Now, you're probably never going to see one of these lists from me without me mentioning at least one China Miéville novel, because that guy is the best, if he's not the best fantasy author out there for me, he's second best. Anyway, in this, China Miéville gives us his take on Moby Dick, except his take on Moby Dick involves trains tracking a giant mole, and it's interesting, it's creative, it's vibrant, it's everything we love about China Miéville with his writing. Like, it's just weird and wonderful and unusual, with a lot of food for thought, a lot of very interesting things to learn, and as always, like, that vocabulary, you will learn words. And best of all, like, he doesn't take this one too seriously again. It was a very fun read, which some of his books may not necessarily be, but this one was very fun from start to finish. And I think it's not one of his more widely beloved works, but it is one of his best compared to some of the other things he's written. It certainly, I feel like it's certainly among one of his more accessible reads. So if you're thinking of trying China Miéville for the first time, it is something to consider, especially if you're a fan of Moby Dick. But to keep things moving on, at number 7 we have a pick from Michael Moorcock, and that is Gloriana, which is one of his earliest and most highly regarded novels, and it's his... Michael Moorcock always has some very interesting things to say about the British and the monarchy, and in this book we get like this, not so much scatting as just this almost semi-repulsive portrayal of the monarchy, in just the decadence and the degradation of it, and the way he describes like courtiers and these kind of things. Like, it's all very strategic, it's all very you can sense just the mockery and the disdain in that portrayal, but that's just his portrayal of the monarchy in the book. Aside from that, like, this is very much a tale of high fantasy. Like, our main character is a captain who is like he's like this sketchy spy, except he's like a double triple agent over, and it's a story of potential invasion and these kind of things, like a lot of political scheming and maneuvering, and it's great. Like, it's not like the pulp sword and sorcery fancy you would assume when you hear Michael Moorcock. It's more of just this engaging tale, and it has like a lot of creativity, a lot of interesting things happen in it, a lot of storylines that we didn't necessarily expect from him. Like there's this really one weird one with a wizard who becomes infatuated with someone, so he makes some very questionable choices, and like a lot of these stories, they will get you thinking. They will get you thinking a lot about the ethics and morality of people who have certain skill sets, and not just skill sets but power in general. Like, because like all Michael Moorcock's books, none of these characters in here are like inherently good or inherently evil. They're all morally grey. They all have moments when they do good things. They all have moments when they do very sketchy things. And like, I can see why it's one of his most beloved works. Like it's just rich and interesting to read. It's a story very off the beaten path, and definitely not one to miss. Like it's a very good standalone book. You don't need to know anything else about any of his writing to like really appreciate this book. Just keep in mind this guy is British, and when you see his portrayal of the monarchy, you'll kind of get a sense of his personality from there, because it is a recurring thread throughout many of his writings. Yeah, moving on is actually another book that was published this year that completely blew my mind, and that is Catherine Arden's The Warm Hands of Ghosts. So she stated that this is a book that she's been working on for years in terms of conceptualizing and what she decides to include and all of that, and it comes across like this is a really riveting portrayal of a nurse who it's set around the time of World War One, and this nurse, she receives word that her brother died, but she notices some inconsistencies in the effects that were returned to her, and even though she was on the front and she got injured and she got sent back home, she got medically discharged and sent back home to Canada, she decides to go on another tour of duty back to the front in Belgium to try and locate her brother, who she was informed was killed in action, but she believes is missing. And this is a very fascinating story, because like it does a really good job of portraying World War One in terms of like just the effects it had both on people, on society, on countries far and wide. It also tells these very human stories of different people just trying to find their family, or trying to... It's very much a family focused story in terms of the lengths people go to for the sake of their families in these books. And it follows three different, well, maybe four, female protagonists, and just their journeys with respect to the war. And there is very much a fantastical element to this story. I'm not versed enough in Russian mythology to recognize the antagonist, but I'm sure people who have read these books will recognize him quite easily. He does fill a particular trope of a fantasy evil that I could get behind, like it allowed me to appreciate his presence a bit more. But yeah, this book was just engaging. It was... every now and then you get a fantasy book that it treads the boundary between genre fiction and literary fiction. You can just tell it's a book that has a very high chance of just doing well when award season roll around, and this book is one of them. And even if ignoring awards and all of that, it's a very fascinating book to read. Like this is going to be a fantasy book unlike anything you've read. It's very much so more on the magical realism side. It's more like it's historical fantasy essentially, but it's one you do want to read, especially if you're a fan of that kind of story, historical fantasy, magical realism, that kind of thing. And if you're a fan of Catherine Arden, like she absolutely smashes this one straight out of the park for me. And yeah, that was number 8. Number 9 is actually the first book I've read from this author, which is a travesty because like everyone loves him, and I'm very late to this particular party, but that is The Folding Knife by KJ Parker. Now, I'm not sure what I expected when I picked up this book, but this is very much a story of a overpowered senator in a pseudo-Roman society, and he's very skilled. He's a very Machiavellian character. He's very skilled at getting things his way in such a manner that everyone feels like they win, which is one of the most dangerous ways and one of the easiest ways to get things done, when everyone feels like they win. But he always seems to come out on top. And what just utterly fascinated me about this book is that other than being set in a secondary world, there's not much in terms of fantasy to this. This book, the character in general, he's very focused on like politics. He's very focused on economics. He's the chairman of a bank, and because of that, like, we just have a lot of like a heavy incorporation of like economics, of finance, of politics, and also some very human stories to tell, because we have like this character study of this guy who's reached the pinnacle of society, but at the same time he has almost nothing in the way of a family life. Like his family life is entirely in shambles, and in that regard I leave it for you to read and find out, because he's like that is one of the most fascinating parts of the book, to see a guy who somehow manages to succeed so brilliantly in all the facets that society tells us you're supposed to succeed in, fail so utterly and completely and terribly on a more personal, on a more familial, on a more human level. Like, it's just really wonderful. And as always with these type of characters, the story is essentially a story of Icarus, a man who flew too close to the sun and he got burned. And yeah, so to round out that, like, just check it out. Like, it was extremely engrossing. I enjoyed it tremendously, and I immediately hopped into another KJ Parker book which stands a very strong chance of appearing on one of these future lists, given my enjoyment with it so far. But yeah, that's number 9 to wrap up this list of 10 of the best standalone fantasy novels I've read. Is I can't finish in similar to how I can't not mention China Mieville in one of these lists. I can't not mention Guy Gabriel Kay, who a lot of people rightly regard as one of the best living fantasy authors currently. Like, in particular, the book that I'm going to mention on this list is A Song for Arbon, which is just his take. In this one, he kind of sets his sights on a pseudo-French setting where like music plays a big focus, but it is very much a story of these two nobles and their conflict, as much of his stories are. Like, and it's everything we love about Guy Gabriel Kay. Like, I think this might be one of his most accessible works, and of course, like, it's heavily thematic, absolutely engaging characters, compulsive reading. We do have the elements of a holy war in here, like engaging, engrossing, unforgettable. If I start going on Guy Gabriel Kay without trying to summarize this book into like single one words, I'll be here forever. This book is this video is almost already half hour long. So needless to say, definitely one of the stronger Guy Gabriel Kay novels out there. Much beloved. If you're looking for a bit more whimsical fantasy from him, this would be the one to look for. And yeah, that's another list of 10 of the best standalone fantasy novels I've read in recent memory. Some recent reads, some old reads here. Do you like any of these? Did any of them catch your fancy? Drop a comment, let me know your thoughts, and until next time.